Yo, what is up everybody? Jumpin here, and today I'm back on some Diablo 4, and I'm going to be showing off my Minion tank build. It's a Shadow Minion build, and it actually uses the Mages, as crazy as that is. Now the reason for this is because I am using Tyrael's Might, and I did make a video about this, and I said that I was using this build using the chest piece, and it was designed to be a tank, and a lot of people wanted to see it, so here we go. Now, I've been able to push up to 120 in the pit with this build, and the main thing is I never die. I never have really any survivability problems, and even the boss shenanigans don't really bother me, and I can play like a big dummy noob, and I'm fine. That's what I wanted to do with this build. Once I knew how broken the Holy Bolt Elixir was with the Necro, I just kind of thought, like, as long as I can do the Helltide content and have a blast, and do Nightmare Dungeons and absolutely crush that and never die still, and be able to do the pit and push up to well past 100. Now, my cap, I would say, is going to be in the 120s with this build. There is no doubt. I don't see myself being able to do the damage I need with this type of setup going past this point. Even with the Holy Bolt, it's just not going to work. But realistically, most people aren't going to go past 120. In fact, most people probably won't even get to 100. So this build is designed to easily get you to 100 and never die. You can play with your friends and, you know, you're not dying. That's the main thing. And if you hate these bosses, you're like, yo, this is crazy. They put all this crap out everywhere. How am I supposed to dodge this? Well, you don't have to dodge it. You just kind of stand next to the boss and just go to town. And then the main thing is, if the boss does have any minions, if they have any minions they spawn, you will nuke a boss and they will just instantly die. That's how the Necromancer works. I mean, look at this. This is tier 119, and every time he spawns minions, I'll take huge chunks off of him. And the thing is, my damage is crap. If you want the most DPS, you have to go Shadow Golem. That is the build for sure. You probably want to have Army of the Dead, and you're going to want to have a two-handed scythe. What that means is that you're going to have really crappy cooldowns. You're not going to have a Bone Storm barrier, which is amazing. It's the best barrier in the entire game, at least in my opinion. And yeah, you're going to die, man. Like, once you push to tier 100... I don't know, it depends. If you're a god gamer, you know, more power to you, you're never going to die. But if you're an average gamer who just wants to have a really fun, powerful build that can do all the content, including the pit, and be able to get up to tier 100 or up to all the way to tier 120, no problem, this is the build for you. But you do have to use the Holy Bolt if you want to do the crazy damage. For everything else, besides the pit, you don't have to use the Holy Bolt. Alrighty guys, well now I'm going to break down this build for you and tell you everything you're going to ever want to know about it. Alrighty, well I'm about to give you some major TLDR. If you want to just go and just copy a bunch of stuff to make a base version of this build, you can do that because that's what I did. I went to Maxroll. That is a wonderful website for getting builds and copying builds. It's very easy to use. That's what I like about it. I will put the link to this build in the description. The Paragon, the skill points, it's all basically the same, but I have, of course, changed it because of this chest piece. That is the focus of the build itself. Now, if you don't have this chest piece, that's fine. It's up to you. If you want to do what I'm doing in terms of being super tanky and never really dying, then you should get the chest piece. But here's the big problem. On the Necromancer, you get Golem Mastery on a normal chest piece. If you want to do the Golem build and actually do the most damage possible, then you just cannot use this chest piece. The Uber is just useless on this class for minions. Now, it does have its uses though. There is a lot of things that this chest piece can do that you can't do without it. Let me give you the prime example. I can actually raise skeletons at any point, and because it's an attack now, my raised skeletons is making my minions attack. So I do not have to Decrepify to make them attack. I can hit the group one time with Decrepify, and then I can just raise skeletons the entire time. So that is one of the best things about this chest piece. And in lower content, it just does a lot of damage for us. Decrepify has one of the craziest artillery effects in the game. I mean, just look at that. It just sucks in. So it absolutely is a fantastic effect that you can kind of throw in there. And the entire time, I'm still doing artillery with my raised skeleton. And there's a bunch of cool stuff. I mean, check this out. That is my blood mist, and it just makes you new. It's really cool. Now, another thing about this is that it dramatically helps with our cooldowns. I'm focusing way more on cooldown than you would be if you're going for pure DPS with the golem. Pure DPS is a two-hander. You really should use that if you're trying to get the most out of everything. But I can use a focus, so I can get extra cooldown speed, which is nice, and on everything, I try to get ultimate cooldown speed. The most important thing for my survivability is always having Bone Storm up, so I can get this amazing barrier. The Golem gets the barrier as well. So even if I'm not in the fight and I'm further away, I'm still going to get a barrier from that Golem. So I really want to be able to keep this up 100% of the time, and depending on the content. Now this is a prime example of enemies not dying. When you're in the training area, obviously these guys can't die. So I can really test out my lucky hit chance and my cooldown for the higher content like the pit 100 plus, where enemies just are not going to die instantly. But in lower content, Decrepify is not as strong for cooldown because everything just dies. So I'm going to show you right now. If I pop my ultimate and I start spamming all my stuff, I mean, look at this. When I go into Blood Mist, I can easily get my Bone Storm back to keep my defenses up. And I can also spam my Golem attack as well. I can do all types of stuff. I mean, look at the Golem spam. It is purely because the enemies are not dying here. I'm able to hit them with all these lucky hits. The lucky hit from the chest piece is amazing. All these arrows are hitting and giving me lucky hits, and Decrepify is giving me the cooldown to be able to spam all my stuff. Now, I do like Blight. Blight is a good damage option, but I do think for the tank aspect of the build, I just love Blood Mist. So if you really need the damage, you could use Blight, which is what is on the Maxroll setup, but I decided to switch to Blood Mist because of the chest piece as well. I mean, just look at that. That is so cool, and this is one of the biggest things about the chest. Unfortunately, you cannot really use the Golem. That's why you have to be stuck with using Shadow Mages. Now, the most important thing about damage is absolutely trying to get passives. On my pants, I have Shadow Mage Mastery with the greater affects, and on my gloves, I also have the Shadow Mage Mastery. Now, one thing I want to bring up real quick is what do you do if you're doing lower content like Nightmare Dungeons, or if you're doing lower pit runs? Well, if enemies die really quickly, Decrepify is not going to give you your cooldowns back nearly as good. So Bone Storm might not be up all the time, and you can actually take a lot of health damage that way. That is a problem with the chest piece. You want to keep your health up so that you can constantly get the artillery effect. And Flicker Steps is a great way that you can knock off 10 seconds of your Bone Storm cooldown. You can just keep it up 100% of the time using these. Now, as you go higher in the pit, and enemies don't die as quick, you can go ahead and take these off because your Decrepify should give you your cooldowns back, no problem. Now, the other thing I want to quickly bring up is that this is my Ghetto Doombringer. Can you use Doombringer on this build? I say yes. I would like to try that. There is a slot. I can go ahead and move this utility aspect from the gloves, put them on some boots, and then go ahead and use the Doombringer. If I did that, then basically I could hopefully rely on the lucky hit chance to do Shadow to inflict Shadow Blight, so that I wouldn't have to rely on the Shadow Priest empowering the Skeleton Warriors to deal shadow damage. All of this stuff is meant to help you get your Shadow Blight passive triggered so that you can get a damage bonus, which is a 120x. Now, if you have a two-hander and you're looking for big damage, you want to put this on a two-hander, and it's 240x, which is crazy. On a necklace, it is 180x. Now, I'm going to go over my gear, finally. So I'm going to just kind of hover over this. If you want to pause it and look what I have, you can. I'll talk about a couple things. On the helmet, I went for that greater armor, mainly because I just wanted to make sure I had enough armor. You want to have at least 9,300 armor. If you hit that, you are at the cap for the physical damage reduction. Also, cooldown is super nice to have on the helmet, so I would highly recommend trying to get it. On the gloves, attack speed, crit chance, definitely things that you want. I absolutely have 100% crit chance once I have my Bone Storm up. So I get extra DR from having that up 20%, and you get 15% crit chance. So once I pop that, I have 100%. And also, the Decrepify size, to be honest, I would be able to live with just one boost to this. Like 65 or 70% is more than enough for me. You might also notice that my gear is not masterworked, like barely at all, because I just don't care. That's the truth. I was waiting for the patch for the price, and then once that came, I still don't like the masterworking system all that much. I think I want to make a video and actually talk about it a little bit. But the pants here are pretty good just because they have the passive. That's the main thing you really want. That's a lot of damage. Same with the gloves. If you can get that passive with a greater affix, that's so good. But on the pants and on all the gear, having more intelligence is really big with the Holy Bolt Elixir. So if you want a perfect build, if you can have a greater affix on every piece of intelligence, that is something that you're really kind of looking for. Just because the more intelligence, and on your necklace, if you can get an intelligence percentage, especially a greater affix, that's going to help a lot with the Holy Bolt damage. It's just a big part of it. Now, I talked about Decrepify, but I do think trying to get 100% corpse tendril size is super nice. You want to be able to pull them all together because the Holy Bolt, when it blows up, is going to kill them all. Also, normal boots, you can get a lot of movement speed on these. It's super good. Now, here is the weapon. It is a dagger just because I could have used the wand. That is better probably because of the lucky hit chance. But this had a double greater affix on it, so I went for it. And also, what you really want to temper on here, it is so important, is minion attack speed. You could get Bone Storm duration. I don't recommend that because that requires you to get a weapon temper, and you cannot get minion attack speed if you go for Bone Storm duration. So I think that you want to get it, and you also want to try to target it if possible with the masterwork. If you look at the Maxroll build, you'll notice that they are targeting it, and that is because of the key passive. I will talk about that in a moment. Also, I guess I should bring up, you definitely want to have this aspect to make Bone Storm a darkness skill. By doing that, that allows it to really trigger our 120x damage just by hopping in the mobs. And re-popping it, I've noticed it seems like it can just re-trigger it right away. So that's one reason why I really like to spam Bone Storm so much. Now this is a great example, the aspect here that gives your minions attack speed. I'm pretty sure that counts as minion attack speed. And what's important about that is in the Paragon board, our best legendary node is Cult Leader. Let me find that. There it is. And with Cult Leader, I'm pretty sure that you actually have to have minion attack speed for this, not your own personal attack speed. Even though the minions do get your attack speed, I believe. But it just seems like you want to have enough minion attack speed. So what your goal is to try to get 55 or 56% minion attack speed. And then with the aspect, you should be hitting 100%. And then you're going to get that 30x. And yeah, that's big damage. So definitely, it is something you want to target if you're going for like a super mid-max perfect build. Minion attack speed, super important. Now for the ring here, this is the 120x. Like I said, the Bone Storm can trigger it super easy. The Shadow Warriors absolutely help a lot for that, but I do think Doombringer, with its ability to do Shadow, could work, especially on the higher content. Now with Doombringer though, for the tank build, that would add so much extra life, that would be amazing. Same with the effect, it makes them do less damage, so it would be amazing for a tank build for sure. I actually wish I would have got it. I could craft it, but I just don't want to, I don't care. And here is the other ring. It is the minion damage. And the main thing, like I said on the rings, is to have that ultimate cooldown. You might be wondering, why is it damage to curse and not like the mage damage? Well, the reason you go for that is because, one, I want the damage to curse. It affects the golem. It affects the shadow mages. It affects the warriors. It also affects my chest piece. It affects every bit of damage I can do. So the Maxroll build switched to this at some point, and I can see why, because it makes a lot of sense. The golem still does a lot of damage here. One of the most important things to have is this necklace. That 38% damage reduction is crazy good. It is just all the time, you and your minions. That's amazing. Now, for the necklace, you 1000% want to have Hellbent Commander. I cannot get that. It has been a nightmare, and Hellbent Commander would dramatically boost the damage of my build, just because it's a huge multiplier if you're close to your minions, and I'm already next to all my minions, so I really wish I could have that, but unfortunately, I don't. Now, I guess I'll talk about the Book of the Dead. It's pretty cookie cutter. For the warriors, we have Reaper. For the mages, we have the Shadow Mages, and we also have the Shadow Damage, 3x per mage. And for the golem, we have Blood, which this one right here is definitely the best one for the damage. Now, when it comes to the Paragon and the skill points, some of this is a little different from Maxroll. I normally would totally recommend just going to the website and copying it there. It's very easy with Maxroll. Now, one thing about their boards, though, I absolutely love the boards. They're very efficient, very well done. So normally, all I'll ever do is just kind of tweak it a little bit if I need to. And in this case, I needed to tweak the board because I had way too much resistance. And that is because of the chest piece. Now, for the first glyph here, I'm going to try my best to show you these boards, but it is just way harder, in my opinion, with a video. And you would have to definitely pause it to try to copy it if you're using the video. But the first glyph is Amplify. Now, if you want to just take a look at the board and pause it, you can. Now, this board here, this is Cult Leader. You can see how it came in. Also, I mean, just look how efficient this is. Super, super nice. The glyph in this board is Dead Riser. Now, the next board, I believe, is going up. But I do think that this is number 4 or number 3, mainly because we still can get this max life here. This is why we really want to have this board earlier so that we can get that max life there. Now, this particular glyph here, this is Essence for the crit damage. This board is Bone Graft, and you can see how it is done here, if you want to pause it. Now, this one over here, this is Hawking Monstrosity. The glyph is very easy because we have Golem in it, so it matches it pretty well. Now, moving up, this one is Flesh Eater, and that's a very good one for the 40x. I mean, that's such a good legendary node. It's kind of crazy. The glyph that's in this one is Scourge for the shadow damage over time. Really, that will help out the key passive, but a lot of the different glyphs that you use, a lot of times the secondary effect is really why you want to use it, because the additive damage you get from a lot of these are kind of crap. And who cares when you have so much additive damage potentially? You really just want that multiplicative damage. This one here is Scent of Death, and if you want to pause it, you can to copy the board. And the glyph in this one is Exploit. Now the final board is Wither. See the board and pause it. And then finally, this is Territorial for the damage reduction close and also the damage to close. Now, for my skill tree, this is kind of backwards because I did Paragon first. I am currently using Blood Mist, so if I'm using Blight, I would switch this up. I would not have this point here, for example, and I would probably take out a point somewhere. maybe from Skeleton Warrior Mastery. I'm not exactly sure, but I would get Blight. And basically with this one though, I like this because Blood Mist makes me unstoppable. It is such a good oh crap button. And you have seen with the chest piece, it's pretty nice. It does have a really cool effect with it. And it does leave behind corpses. One thing I should actually talk about real quick is kind of your early engagement with Blood Mist is amazing. Because if you go in and you Blood Mist, you'll make a corpse. And then what you want to do is just immediately tether. And then at that point, just go to town. And you just start spamming your skeletons with Decrepify and all your different things. So that's a nice thing about Blood Mist is that when you move to the new pack, you can start with this to make the corpse, suck them all up with the tendrils, and then go to town. Another thing that I do is put an extra point into Grim Harvest. I like to spam Decrepify. The chest piece has that really cool attack that hits a whole bunch. So being able to generate more essence so I can spam is nice. And I don't really need this extra DR. I'm super capped out. It's kind of crazy. You definitely want the cooldown on Decrepify, and you want the vulnerable on the Corpse Tendril. And all these shadow perks here are pretty decent. The problem with Gloom is that it's only increased shadow damage. So the mages get affected, and that's good. But I really would like Hellbent Commander, because this affects all the minions, and it's just a huge multiplier for them. So you definitely want that. And the big difference between Golem Mastery and then Skeleton Mage Mastery is I have 10 points, it's 200x. Now if I could get like 8 extra points for this, the damage difference is crazy. That's why the Golem is just better. It is a better DPS setup than the Mages, for sure. But that is all the skill points. So the final thing I'm going to do in this video is I want to talk a little bit about damage reduction and why it's so crazy on this build. And I'm going to let the T119 play in the background, and once I'm done talking, I'll just shut up and let it continue playing on. But I do want to just talk a little bit about damage reduction, because this Necromancer gets so much, especially with the chest piece, because you do get extra damage reduction from that chest piece. But once I have all my buffs going, and if I can maintain Bone Storm, I actually get 75% general DR. Not all damage reduction is the same. You have your conditional damage reductions, and then you have your general damage reduction, which damage reduction while fortified is a conditional one, but if your build is always fortified, that's basically general damage reduction. The big problem with damage reduction close and damage reduction distance is what happens when something smacks you off screen if you're focusing mainly on damage reduction close and you're relying on that. Or if you have damage reduction from burning enemies or vulnerable enemies. These are conditions that might not be met, or some enemies may not have that condition, so you just can't rely on that. Having a lot of general damage reduction is crazy, because all I have to do is just really rely on the fortified damage reduction. I have close damage reduction. I have other sources that will definitely get me to that 85% cap. Because if you can reach an 85% damage reduction cap, that is going to allow you to stop dying. The main thing you always want to look at and try to do is to make sure you hit your armor cap. Right now it's 9,300, very easy to get. That's going to give you 85% damage reduction for the physical. Combining that with 85% damage reduction will make all physical attacks just tickle you. That's what happens, because it's 85% and 85%. Resistance is a little bit different. The problem with that one is that normally it's capped at 70, and you can have that 85%, but it's not the same. This chest piece, especially if you can target it with the masterwork, you can get that resistance over 80%. You can get it at 85%, maybe if you had a greater affix or something. I'm not exactly sure if you can or not. But hitting 85% resistance and having 85% damage reduction, having a lot of healing, having this crazy barrier that they can never really get through, it refreshes itself constantly, and I have all of this damage reduction. That is why this build is so crazy tanky. And if you can get damage reduction, especially non-conditional ones like general damage reduction, you will be so tanky on every build. But there are some that are better, like Barbarian, Druid, and of course, Necromancer. Because you can get all the damage reduction in the world on the Sorcerer, but right now they are relying on having infinite Flame Shield to stay alive. You know, that's kind of where we are with the pit and the classes, but I love the Necromancer tank. Super comfy, super fun to play, and yeah, I hope you guys can get this chest piece. I think that on a lot of builds, you can use this because of that maximum resistance. You can use this to really make yourself a lot tankier. And on most builds, giving up the chest piece is not that big of a deal. This gives you damage reduction. You can look at it like, hey, this is a damage reduction aspect that I'm putting on for the chest piece. I'm getting more resistance, I'm getting general damage reduction. That's pretty good. And then of course, if you can benefit from having the artillery in different ways, that's great too. So the Necromancer with the minions, you gotta give up Golem Mastery, you gotta focus on the mages. It's kind of lame. But this chest piece on a lot of builds I can see being amazing. Now I'm gonna shut up and let the rest of this play out. I really hope that you have enjoyed it and that it has helped. If it has, will you please like the video for me? Be sure to subscribe for future videos, and I really do hope that everyone has a very nice day, and peace out.